Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tech in Lockdown, Creating and Sharing Performance Online panel. We have an amazing group of panelists with us today. My name is Kiki Stevenson. I'm the Artistic Program Coordinator here at the Other Palace. And with me chairing as well, I have James from Musical Theatre Network and Emily Gray from Mercury Musical Developments. And we'll just jump right in. Let me introduce the panel to you. To my, I don't know what that's going to be on the other end, but this way, I've got Jamie Lambert, who is the CEO of Lambert Jackson Productions, who's behind a lot of work that comes to the Other Palace. But what will be most important for today's panel is the Leave the Light On concert series, which has been done in partnership with Theatre Cafe. I also have, where are they in relation? I have Flo, who is from the National Theatre, focusing on the amazing NT Live series that has been on YouTube since lockdown started, and I'm sure everyone has taken advantage of. I have Bartek, who is behind Seven Hills Films and has been doing a lot of online content, which you may have been watching, including the On Hope Song Cycle, Signal Online, and Bonfire sessions. He is our technical genius today, so if you have any specific technical questions later on, he's the right person to go to. We also have Hayden right there, who is our social media tech champion from the Arts Council Digital Culture Network. So Hayden will be talking a lot about what sort of resources the Arts Council has. And then finally, we have Melanie Sharp from Stagetext, CEO of Stagetext, who is going to be talking to us on how we can be conscious of best practices in accessibility while creating content during lockdown. That's us.
Thank you,
Emily.
Thank you, Kiki. Hi, I'm Emily, Executive Director of Mercury Musical Developments. It's lovely to be here with everyone. And I'm just setting this up in terms of saying our plan is that each of our wonderful panelists will speak for about 5 minutes around their particular expertise. That'll be our first sort of half an hour of this event. Then we've got half an hour of general questions for our panel to answer. And then we'll do about half an hour opened up to all of your questions. We're planning on doing about 90 minutes, but if this thing is thriving and people are very excited and there's lots of questions, we could go until 7. We're also aware of how much Zoom we can take in a day. So, you know, we could wrap it up at 6:30. But welcome all, and over to James.
Yes, echoing that, welcome everyone. And typically with an event with a tech in the title, we've had various tech things already. My little bit of tech advice is so that our lovely tech moderator, Ellen Bergen, can pick up any questions that you might want to submit at any time our panelists are talking. Please write them in the YouTube chat, if you're watching this live, with the word question in capital letters at the beginning of your question, so that Ellen can find those questions and then pass them on to us to ask our lovely panelists in the last part of the event. Hope you enjoy it.
Brilliant, and we'll just kick it straight off. So again, the first portion is we're going to go through our panel, let them all introduce themselves and kind of talk to you about what they've been doing during lockdown and specifically how they've been creating and sharing performance. So we will start with Jamie Lambert. Hello, Jamie. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to this virtual panel. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to just launch on in, tell us a bit about Lambert Jackson, tell us a bit about Leave the Light On concert series?
Sure. So about 2 years ago, myself and my fantastic business partner, Eliza, started Lambert Jackson, which is a production company which primarily specialized for the first part of our career in one-night events, which we started at the Other Palace and have since put on all over the country and in Australia. And we, for the last 2 years, have sort of been very artist focused. Both Eliza and I are both artists, and we wanted to run a company focused very much on highlighting talent and particularly musical theatre, West End talent. And when the lockdown started, we were dealing with the rescheduling of, as I'm sure many people have been, all of our events for however long at the time. I think we were looking at until anything before June, and then as obviously the discussions have gone on, we've been postponing them. So we had all of that to deal with initially, just before lockdown. And then when it was announced that theatres were going to close completely, we were up all night trying to sort of come to a conclusion about how best to, one, keep our business going in a time when there was so much uncertainty, but actually primarily find a way to monetize the kind of events that we already do in a safe way for actors to still be able to earn money. And initially, at the time, the whole series has been with the Theatre Cafe, but the primary thing for us was safety. And the very first day was unbeknownst to us the day that we ended up going into lockdown. So we did the first 2 concerts with Lucy Jones and Sarah O'Connor, where we did them at the Theatre Cafe, and we got them there by car and had a socially distanced setup. And then that night we went into lockdown. So overnight we had to work out a way for artists to stream quality shows from their own homes and still have it in a way that it could be monetized. As you can imagine, that came with various and extensive problems, because normally when you're streaming something, you have an expert there to set up the room, make sure that everything looks good, make sure that the artist is happy. And we had to find a way to do it so that people could do it from their iPhones, do it so that we could get tracks to them. We have an MD, a great MD called Josh Winston, who has been recording tracks, piano tracks, and FaceTiming the artists and getting those over to them. And doing these 45-minute shows. And as with any kind of tech, when you're dealing with people all over the country, there's going to be people who have problems, and some of those have been surmountable and some of them haven't. And we've learned quite a lot during that time. But provisionally, it's been a great success. We've done over 70 shows so far, and I believe we've paid since lockdown begun over £30,000 to artists in the industry, and that's been great. The way that we've done the ticketing is £7.50. We've worked out that the largest percentage that we can give goes to the artist. That's £3 a ticket, and then both Lambert Jackson and the Theatre Cafe have taken enough to cover the running costs, and then there's also the streaming and licensing, the tech fee as well. And it's been a great success. We've been very proud of it, and the challenges have been numerous with regards to, I think the main one is dealing with the fact that artists have gone to lockdown around the country, and when lockdown first started, we found that different network providers were having certain problems with how many people were at home all of the time using different networks. And that was one of the biggest issues that we've had. One thing that we ended up deciding to do for a portion of them when there were issues were having them record the shows as live and then putting them out as live streams, which did solve that problem. But it has been, I think, one of the most stressful things that I've ever been involved in, but also I think one of the most rewarding, because I think that what we're going to find from this time when theatres are closed, and currently we don't know when they're going to reopen, is I think we're going to find that there is a new level to streaming performances that I don't think is going to necessarily go away when this is all finished. So it's been a really interesting ride.
And just a quick question before we move on. Jamie's also 1/4 of Collabro, and you've done some performances as part of the Leave the Light On series. What is your setup? Because we've probably got a lot of independent performers on the stream who are thinking, if I wanted to go directly to a Facebook or Instagram, what is the basic sort of setup I need? What does your setup look like?
Well, our brilliant tech team, who are called GinnyNet, they the platform that we have, I'm not a technician, by the way. I know this is a tech panel, but I from what I understand, they have designed it in a way that it works very well with anything that's been filmed on an iPhone. With regards to Facebook and Instagram, I'm not massively knowledgeable about those things, but when I did it, we wanted some degree of charitable aspect as well to what we were doing. So my show, all proceeds from all teams went to acting for others. And I was in this room that I'm in now, and I have a little tripod that I sometimes film myself singing on when we're doing demos and stuff, and my iPhone, and that's what I had. But I know there are people on the panel who are significantly more qualified than me to advise on the best tech to use when you're streaming. But that was my setup.
That's great. Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to pass it over to Emily now.
Hello, thanks so much, Jamie. So handing over to somebody who is normally not on the screen. He is normally behind the scenes being a technical wizard. Bartek Podkova, who's the managing director at Seven Hills, very quick off the mark in this lockdown to be working with ALP musicals, Adam Lenson and Chris Chorney, also tech wizards. Three of them have put Signal online, have done the Bonfire series, and of course Bartek's also been part of the team for the On Hope digital song cycle with the Other Palace. So Bartek, we'd love you to enlighten us a little on your discoveries, top tips, and how to get the best flow, if you would. Thank you.
Right, thanks very much for inviting me. So a lot of my experiences have actually in a way been covered by Jamie already. I guess the biggest difference is I come from a very different background than most of the people here, in that I got into all of this through filmmaking, and theater is kind of just one part of what I do. And it all started with Adam Lenson asking me to film a show for him a few years ago. And that kind of evolved into me filming a lot of shows, including the actual physical incarnation of Signal at the H Club. And what happened when lockdown happened was that we were going to go to Beam to do Signal at Beam, and that turned into the first Signal online. And then we kind of carried on with probably the first 6 weeks of that being just a constant string of testing and rebuilding everything from scratch and trying different methods of streaming. We got to a setup that we're pretty happy with right now, where we can get really good sound, and it doesn't take forever to set up, and it's pretty flexible, but it was pretty stressful and pretty exhausting getting here. Our approach is to prioritize sound quality over everything else, which is why we actually we're going to use Zoom at first, and then we got rid of it because it's okay for talking, but for music it's a bit problematic. So kind of step one was getting the sound to be really good, and then we've kind of tweaked and tweaked and tweaked and tweaked. And at this point, we kind of have elements such as people being able to be interviewed, two composers being able to present the song that they wrote together and things like that. Whereas at first we couldn't do it completely real time, so all of that was impossible. I guess what I can suggest to everyone in terms of what they can do to ensure that they're getting the most out of their streams is first, learn how to manipulate your sound kind of within your room. So figure out where to place the mic so that it's as clear as possible, so that you're not picking up street noises. Close your windows. It's very basic stuff, but very often we don't even think about it, because if you're in your kitchen, you hear your fridge all the time, so you don't register it. And then you start streaming and, oh, everyone else can hear your fridge now. So it starts with just kind of clear your space in terms of the sound. try to find whatever you have in your house that you can use, be it for sound or for lighting. For example, the cable that I'm using right now for my microphone, I've had that for about 15 years. I bought it before I even first thought about doing film. I bought it back when I was playing the guitar, and I've owned it ever since. I've got several microphones, all of which, except for one, I bought before I started filmmaking. So a lot of people have a lot of stuff lying around that they can put together. And it's even easier, to be honest, with lighting. So right now I'm using a bunch of film lights that are kind of all around me like this. But to be honest, you can get a lot of this from just using the lights that you have lying around. The things that you have to understand are the limitations of webcams, most of which will adjust things automatically. So if you have a very bright window behind you, the webcam will darken everything, so your face will be in the shadow. So you have to ensure that there's enough light on your face. Then if you want to go a step further and make it look nicer, you can start thinking about softening the light, which means making a small source which produces very harsh lighting larger. And you can do that by bouncing it off a wall, bouncing it off a white sheet, stuff like that. And that will start looking better and better. And you kind of go from there. You experiment, you identify problems as you see them. And if you're streaming once a week, then every time you stream, it's a chance to improve. You can watch back what you streamed and, oh, actually, I could do something nice in my background. Oh, I can still hear this in the background, and so on. Then when it comes to streaming itself, one of the things that we've been doing a lot has been to route the sound, which is if you've got a backing track, if you've got a nice mic that you can play around with a bit, you can actually route it into a DAW, so a digital audio workstation, and manipulate that sound so that you're getting the most of it. And very often it's the simplest things that will already give you a lot, like a little bit of compression, a little bit of equalization, that can make you sound a lot better. In some cases, even with a bad mic, we've had people using headphone mics, and not even like those big ones with the mic sticking out, but your regular phone headphones. And you can still get a lot done. It takes a bit of work, but you can do it. I think the most challenging thing technically was when Adam and Chris had to set up someone using Bluetooth headphones. Bluetooth headphones are horrible. They often introduce a delay of like half a second. Imagine trying to sing when you're hearing yourself back after half a second. It's impossible. And last week, Adam and Chris managed to create a very complex setup that delayed the backing track by exactly the same amount and actually allowed the singer to perform with those headphones. They didn't have any other headphones. I think the headphone jack in their laptop was broken, so they couldn't even borrow the headphones. It was crazy, but it worked. So Adam and Chris figured that out.
So Bartek, we're sort of coming to the end of the first 5 minutes. I'm sure there's more that we can come back to. But
I could talk about this for an hour, so do interrupt me.
Right, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll hear more from you. James. Oh, no, sorry, it's back to Kiki, isn't it?
Hello again, it's me. You're never going to get rid of me. We're going to head over to Flo, who's the senior producer, programming and administration for National Theatre Live, and kind of shift gears, because with Jamie and Bartek, we were kind of talking about content that has been created during this lockdown period and the kind of challenges of the liveness of that, and now shifting to NT Live, which has been, around for quite a bit, and most people are familiar with consuming that in the cinema. So it would be great, Flo, if you could kind of talk about how that shifted to the YouTube platform now that's free and available all over the world for people to watch, and what should other organizations who are maybe looking to stream filmed content that was created prior to lockdown, what do they need to think about that? On that, what sort of agreements or copyright should they be considering? And really, what the National Theatre is doing great is raising donations when watching those. So how would other organizations go about following that model?
Hello, I'm Flo. I am, as you said, senior producer on National Theatre Live at the National Theatre. So most of the time I am producing the live broadcasts that we do, of which are filmed multi-camera theatre productions, filmed with the intention to go into cinemas around the world. So we shoot, we have sort of typically kind of 6 to 8 cameras, and we record in 5.1 surround sound, that's kind of live mix to go into cinemas. So we're very fortunate that we have a huge back catalogue of high quality recordings available to us. When lockdown started, obviously cinemas were also closed, so our cinema partners around the world have been closed, as well as cinemas in the UK, and we wanted to be able to get the work of the National Theatre out, and we've also recently just announced that we are including some of our NT Live recordings that are our partner theatres. So we've got something from the Young Vic, Streetcar Named Desire from the Young Vic, and Coriolanus from the Donmar Warehouse coming up. So we wanted to keep theatre alive, the National's work and our partner theatres alive. And we wanted to make the recordings kind of freely available, knowing that people were in lockdown and many people not able to work, kind of a turbulent time for everyone. So we wanted to make the recordings available online. We went with YouTube to do that. Part of the reason why we did that is YouTube is very easily accessible for lots of people. It also has a function, a lot of people who have smart televisions, there's quite often a YouTube part of your smart TV, so people could watch it on television. And we knew that we already had a National Theatre branded page on YouTube, and we already had some followers on there. So YouTube felt like the right option for us. And the other thing that YouTube offered was this premiere function. So we are making our recordings available for a limited period of time. So they go live at 7 p.m. on a Thursday, which we did 7 p.m. on a Thursday because that's NT Live time. We tend to broadcast on a Thursday and we always go live at 7 o'clock. So we adopted that same practice, and the premiere function on YouTube basically means that the stream starts at 7 p.m, which means that people can all be watching it at the same time, which has been really amazing and has really it's been really amazing to work on, to kind of see the responses of people watching, although they're not physically together, watching with friends and family, and communicating with each other online, on social media, on the YouTube chat function as well. And then the recordings are then available for 7 days after that. So we've kind of got one released, one a week. We've been doing it over the last, April and May, and we'll be doing some more as well, which are yet to be announced. We're not sure how long we're going to continue doing it for, but it felt like a really important way to stay in touch with audiences, to keep theatre alive. We have also been creating lots of content around the streams themselves. So some of that is kind of repurposing existing content that we had available, but we've also been doing quite a lot of fun things with cast and creatives on the team. We've had kind of Q&As with like a kind of like a post-show discussion, I guess, with some of the cast and creative on some productions. We've done Mr. and Mrs. style quizzes. We've done dance-a-thons. We've done quite a lot of kind of people lip syncing to other parts of actors lip syncing to other parts of the show, which has been really fun. And that has been all of this is possible, really. The content and doing the recording, making the recordings available on YouTube at all is a huge thank you to all the artists involved, because I should have started by saying that we didn't have the rights to put those recordings on YouTube. We had to go and get permission from all of those artists involved. It's a huge number of people, and we're hugely grateful to their support, because whilst organisations like the National Theatre are in kind of serious financial challenges at the moment with the theatre being closed, we also know that individual artists, as Jamie was saying, have had their income, their livelihood has stopped. So we're hugely grateful to those artists. We have been, as you said, we have been encouraging people to donate to the National Theatre as part of our streams as well. We've been doing that in a couple of different ways, and we've been so kind of thrilled by the donations that we've had, that we've also now felt able, despite our own financial situation, to make a payment to all of those artists involved, and that felt really important that we were able to do that, given the situation we're in. What else would be useful for you to know? A bit more about fundraising?
Well, it'd be good to know how you've utilized the YouTube platform to accept donations, because obviously that's a very seamless activity of logging on. You go to the page and then there's an option to make a donation.
Yeah, so we have been using the YouTube, able to donate on YouTube. The reason that we're able to do that is because we've got a US affiliate charity, and currently you have to essentially be a US charity to do that function on YouTube. So most organizations, I appreciate, can't do that, but we thought it might be useful for individuals and organizations to know that actually we think the best results for fundraising have been about what the messaging that we've included in the actual video itself. So we've had cards at the start of the show, and then in the interval, if there's an interval, which tells people how they can donate. So that has been that's probably the most effective way, I think, of getting the message across, and really taking it back to being as simple as possible. We're sort of effectively running an emergency appeal here, which isn't something that we usually do, because we're that's, you know, this is the kind of the first time, I guess, that theatres that are charities have found themselves in a situation like this. So we wanted to make the ask as simple as possible. So our advice is kind of thinking about what's the problem that you have, what are you doing about it, what are we doing about it, and how can the viewer help, what can they do to help you. So we've tried to just keep it very as simple as possible. So those are kind of the two key ways that you can encourage donations via YouTube. You can also include information on your YouTube page itself around how to donate, but we think we've certainly found the power of including it in the message itself has been the most effective way to encourage donations from people.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Flo. I'll pass it over to James now.
Great, yeah. So I'm now bringing Hayden into the conversation. This is Hayden Corridus, who is the social media tech champion with Arts Council England's Digital Culture Network. And Hayden, it would be great if you could just tell us a little bit more about what the Digital Culture Network does, how its aims have shifted with so much more digital engagement nowadays, and tell us a little bit more about your role and what your tips would be in terms of using social media to reach audiences in these times with all the content that people are placing online. Thanks.
Definitely. So hi everybody, my name's Hayden. I'm the social media tech champion for the southeast of England. Fundamentally, the Digital Culture Network has 9 different tech champions. We cover the whole digital spectrum. So it's social media, CRM, data, SEO, web design, e-commerce, digital marketing, video content, and SEO. We've also now got an email marketing specialist as well. So what that then means is that we can offer one-to-one support to anybody who is looking for support with any of those subject matters, or if they just want some advice or someone to bounce ideas off of. That's kind of what we're here for. We've been doing this now for about just over a year, I believe. We launched officially in July last year, but we started in February, so we've been doing it for quite a while. And we've spoken to about 300 different national cultural organizations. So we spoke to different 300 different arts and culture organizations across that time period. And what that has meant is that we can now see the kind of requests that the arts and culture sector are looking for, how they're using social media, how they're using digital, how they're working, how their websites are set up. And what it's allowed us to do is to create different content and different ways to try and reach out to the sector. So how we was doing that previously was partnered with Google Arts and Culture, and we used to put on events which we cover SEO, we cover social media, we cover PPC, and just the general digital skill set that would hopefully help an organization actually thrive online. Obviously, now that we're on lockdown, we've had to kind of change that kind of process and that model. So what we're now doing is webinars, which I'm sure there's loads of different people doing webinars about different training sessions, etc. But we just felt that we had, because of our offering is obviously free, and because we all have different individual specialisms, we're in a position where we can offer content and a session that we could hopefully not only inspire but really upskill some different people within the organization. So we actually have a webinar on Thursday, not to plug it, but we do have one on Thursday for Google Analytics, sorry, which is again it's another free webinar, and that's basically what we've been up to over this kind of rough time period. I mean, if I'm honest with you, when the lockdown first started, we had over 200 cases within about 2 weeks. So it got really busy. And just going through that, a lot of that was about digital content, and it was about how they could improve their digital strategy. So we really had to kind of knuckle down and try and figure out, okay, what's the best advice for these people going online now? And what I've been kind of telling everybody is to don't try and land grab. As you can see, everybody was putting content out, and it's just about you trying to really look at your own audience and say, okay, what's my audience, and how can I help my audience currently? How can I provide content that will resonate with them, so that they will then talk about me, so they will then, so that you will then get a champion, so to speak, like a brand ambassador or organization and champion. I think what Flo was saying earlier was quite good, because when she talked about National Theatre Live, there was already a process there. There was already people were used to saying, okay, on Thursday nights, this is when National Theatre Live goes. So their audience was already used to having that kind of that content or that presentation. So you have to really think about any strategy you're going to do, any content you're going to put out. You have to really think about how is this going to align with what we're already doing, how is this going to align with the things we're going to do in the future. So that's fundamentally what the tech champions have been up to over the last, like I said, last 3 or 4 weeks.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Hayden. That's really great. We'll extend on that further in the general discussion, I'm sure. Thank you. Back over to Emily now.
Thank you. Thanks, James. So to Melanie Sharp, who's the Chief Executive of Stagetext. Thank you for being with us, Melanie. And it would be lovely to hear from you about best practice around accessibility in this online world, but also with very few resources, what can we do? What can we manage? And I think it's so important for us to be including this in our discussions and working out what's possible. So do tell us about Stagetext and your work. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. So Stagetext is a charity that was set up 20 years ago by 3 deaf, deafened and hard of hearing people. And the whole premise of Stagetext is that we are deaf-led. So everything that we do is for and by deaf people. So our board is partially, 50% of them are deaf or hard of hearing, as is our staff team. And of course, we have our very large user support group network as well, our ambassadors. So Stagetext are a sector support organisation funded by the Arts Council, and primarily we are there for, if you can't hear it, you need to read it. It's a very simple premise. Make your work accessible. There is 1 in 6 of the UK population who have some form of hearing loss. And I'm sure we've all got aunts, uncles, grandmas, granddads who, when you walk into their house, the television is turned right up loud and they go, all these actors mumble these days and I can't hear them. And actually it's because they have some form of hearing loss. But it takes on average about 10 years for someone to come to terms with their hearing loss. So it's really important that you start to think about access right from the beginning. One of the things that it's true to say, there was a back catalogue that the National Theatre had, and that back catalogue on the whole was subtitled. Yeah, it wasn't, oh my God, throw it on kind of thing. You've got to think of it right at the beginning of the process. So if you're creating content, you need to be thinking about access. If you're writing a funding application, access provision should be in there from the beginning. Whatever you're doing, think access. And that goes for whether it's deaf or hard of hearing, or whether it's for people with visual impairments. You need to be thinking access right from the beginning. Access on the whole costs money. It's as simple as that. You can have different forms and there are different levels of access. We are all striving to do the best practice, but on the whole, subtitles are created by freelancers and freelancers want paying for their work. So don't think it's just going to be a case of, hey, I'm going to create content and on it goes. But there are things we all can do. Of course we can. So the first thing I'd say is Stagetext at the end of this week are going to release 6 training videos that we normally charge for our training. This is how to do subtitling on YouTube. We normally would do it in a 2-hour webinar. They're going to be broken down into 6 equal kind of sessions that you're going to be able to access for free. I would suggest you look at them all because it kind of builds up as to why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you understand the context of how you're going to create these subtitles and who for, it will help you make decisions down the line when you're actually doing it. YouTube can create great subtitles for small pieces of work. Yeah, they're great. It is time consuming, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. You know, it's one of those simple things. I wouldn't suggest you do it for a 2-hour film. It's not going to give you the level of access that you would need. But to create something that is 15 minutes, that you want to put something on your website, that you want to do a promo, it should be accessible. Think about putting your own subtitles on there. And please think deaf accessible subtitles. So you need to have the extra information. If there is something that you can't see on stage, but you could hear as a hearing person, you need to include it in the subtitles. Yeah. I think, to be honest, if you were doing something for individual performers, think about transcripts. Be honest about what level of access you can provide. A lot of your deaf and hard of hearing audiences just want to know that they've been considered. Yeah, they know that you're not the National Theatre and you're not going to be able to do full inclusive subtitles. But if you go, actually, I could include a transcript, might be just song lyrics, it might be a transcript of what you're talking about, and put it alongside and maybe do it on a split screen so you can see it at the same time if you have that capacity, or just attach it and people can download it and read it at the same time. A lot of people will also say, okay, you've got to remember subtitles will reach a wide range of people. And so it's for English as an additional language. They're great for as well. They're also great for people who have any kind of neurodiversity. So they may find distractions of things, a lot of music, a lot of loud noises, lots of flashing images. That is quite busy and the brain can't actually process all that information. So a lot of time people will switch off the sound and use the subtitles as their route through what they are watching on the screen. So subtitles actually serve a wide group of people in society, not just deaf and hard of hearing people. And I think it's also, if you've been cultivating a deaf and hard of hearing audience as a venue previously, you should be thinking about how you're going to carry that audience with you for the future. You can't just go, okay, we're online now, bye, thanks, it's too expensive, which is kind of been some of the thinking up to date. It's been a rush to put things online in that panic. And I get that, I understand that. It's not that we're going, oh my God, you shouldn't do that. But it's now take a step back, think about it and go, how am I going to include my audience that I've already got and that I have been serving to date? Because you want them there whenever we get back into the theatre. So the other thing is we are a sector support organisation. Get in touch with us, enquiries@stagetext.org. It won't cost you anything to send us an email and we will advise to your particular circumstances.
Great. Thank you so much, Melanie. Thank you to all the panel. And I'm going to hand over to James.
Cool. So now we're moving on to talking about some more, opening the discussion out, have some more general questions. We've been receiving some lovely questions from our audience online, and we'll be sharing some of those with the panel in just a moment. First of all, as a general question, we all know that the smooth running of a discussion like this or a online sharing of content is really important. You don't want to leave your audience behind. And I wondered, what do people think about, we're seeing many live streamed performances where we're seeing use of a tech moderator or something like that. And I guess it boasts that question about, do we need an equivalent to the stage manager in terms of the coordination working with the tech team? I just wondered if people had had any experience of working with someone who's sort of stage managing the sharing of content online. Any takers?
I
Should
could
we
get
start with
started?
Bartek? I was going to say, yeah.
So I would say that a lot of what I do during a show is stage management, because during every show we have a tech channel on Zoom with everyone except for me muted, and that's what I use to cue people in. If there is a problem on someone's end, that's where they can let me know, usually through the chat, so as not to distract the performers. And since now, unlike the, I think, second signal, yeah, we kind of went with a slight delay because of technical issues. I won't get into that now, but now that things are very much real time, I can communicate with the performers with delays of like 100 milliseconds. So I can cue them in very easily. I can let them know straight away if there's a problem. And problems do happen. I mean, someone's internet can stop working. Someone's computer can start doing weird things. I mean, if you're in a theater or on a film set, generally the technicians will be working with the equipment that they know, they've tested, sometimes they own, and that's a lot more predictable. And even then you can have problems. If you're dealing with whatever someone has lying around in their house, problems will happen. So having someone in the background kind of managing things, talking to whoever needs talking to, like in one case, I had to talk to a producer and we had to decide, okay, this person's camera is not working. What are our options? What do we do? And we ended up pushing them through the show as much as we could. And then the decision was made to push them to next week. So I would say that anything that's not just one person doing their own streaming requires some sort of stage management. I mean, it's just because we're not physically in the same location doesn't mean that it's actually that different from any other show.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Bartek. Does anyone else on the panel have anything they want to say? Also as an audience member as well, in terms of your experience of what people have shared and in terms of what's worked best in terms of creating a flow of content.
I was just going to sort of echo what Bartek has said, really. We've created some content where we've had cast and creative send in something to us that we've then edited together, because we producers and editors who work at the National, but we've also, when we've facilitated kind of discussions or anything where it's people having conversation with each other, we have had someone there to kind of just make sure everything works as much as you can, with not being able to fix their internet or those sorts of things. But I think that's definitely kind of a good idea for best practice, to have someone else who can help kind of moderate, and all they're thinking about is making sure that it works, rather than thinking about what the content is, you know, what they're saying or performing.
Thank you, Flo. Anyone else? We'll move on to the next question then. Oh, sorry, is that someone?
Yeah, it's me, sorry. I just wanted to echo part of that as well. And I think the importance for that I found as a producer of online content during this time with little to no tech experience is that it's been really important for us to have that that tech partnership in place. I think fundamentally because we're dealing with a challenge here that we haven't ever really had before, which is the fact that for the last however long, we've actually, even in most obviously situations with as a producer, we find ourselves we're in an event, I'll be backstage at the theatre or I'll be front of house, and if there's a problem, I can at least manage the teams who are dealing with it at the time. And if we're in a streamed event like when Leave a Light On started at the Theatre Cafe, we had people there and I was there to be able to manage it at the time. But at the minute when we are unable to do that because people are doing most of their streams from their own homes and we can't send people there to deal with it, it's become even more important for me as a producer to have somebody there we've got a WhatsApp group that we just communicate via the whole show to make sure that if anything goes wrong, mainly for me, I can make decisions, but I need somebody to explain what the options are. As Bartek was saying, I need somebody there to be able to say to me, right, tech-wise, these are your options. And if we can't get over the mountain, then we have to, as Bartek said, push it. But I think that's been incredibly important, especially when it comes to, particularly in our case, where it comes to monetized streams, you're also dealing with customers who've paid however small a fee to watch the show. There's a real pressure there to be able to provide it for them to a certain quality. So it's been really important for us to have that.
Brilliant, thanks, Jamie. And Hayden, if I can bring you in, you were mentioning briefly before about the Digital Culture Network. I just wondered, in terms of people who are thinking about the tech that they have at home and what else they need to access if they realize that they need to approach things in a different way. Can individuals who aren't a member of a national portfolio organization and so on access the Skills of Digital Culture Network, or are there other places that you would signpost people towards for that sort of tech advice?
Yes, for sure. All of our platforms, we have our YouTube page, for example, has quite a lot of free resources on it. We've got a video about how to shoot on using your phone, using your mobile phone. It's 20 minutes long. It goes through lighting. It talks about the equipment you should use. Talks about sound, etc. On the Arts Council website, they also have a lot of resources pointing to different SSOs and the resources that are in the sector. So there's a plethora of different resources available out there already. And if you literally just go to Arts Council's website, there's a segment for Digital Culture Network which will point you in the direction for all of those kind of things.
Amazing, thank you very much. And another question for the general panel. We've had a lot of discussion so far about how do we keep the theatre-ness of the content that we're sharing. When we're sharing some content that's musical theatre or that's theatre, how do we keep the audiences that are engaging with this content feeling that this is a transaction that is different to watching a film or TV? Because obviously currently people can access some very slickly produced films and television for free or near to free. How do we keep people in a mindset that they are willing and wanting to pay or make a donation, but something equivalent to buying a ticket to access theatre and musical theatre content online. What do people think about the positioning of this musical theatre and theatre content online to make it feel different and to make that transaction and the financial exchange different there? I mean, maybe starting with Jamie again, because we started with you in terms of monetizing the Leave the Light On streams.
Sure. Obviously, with us working direct from people's homes with just an iPhone, it's suddenly got really bright. Sorry. It's been there's been a degree of difficulty with that in terms of working out how to make it a live theatre experience for people. But I think Flo touched on this earlier. One of the key things for us has been to put it out at an exact time. And it's our shows for Leave a Light On, they're not rewindable. You can't pause them. They are a live stream. And at the end, they go. And I think that has fundamentally really added to the community it's that community idea. When you go to see it, sorry, I'm just shifting around because I'm getting blinded. There you go. When it's that idea about when you go to the theatre, you have you all go in and you sit down and you're going to watch the show together, and it's that experience I think that is even more important now because we are all in isolation and in lockdown. People need to feel that, and that was also one of the reasons behind why we put Leave a Light On together, because it wasn't just, obviously the focus was paying actors, but during this time, but actually creating entertainment for people at home who know that at 7 o'clock or 6:30 or whatever time you put it out, they're going to be sat with hundreds of other households around the UK watching a live show or a live stream of a show. That community part of it, I think, is a lot to do with what the theatre is about.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I mentioned we've been doing this sort of premiere function on YouTube earlier, so that people that first stream can kind of be watched together. It's then available for a longer time afterwards. But the response we've had on our social media channels has been amazing. We've had people dressing up for their night at the theatre at home, making their own theatre tickets, ordering their own interval drinks, making little like interval drink receipts with their, like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, 2 gin and tonics. It's been really, really wonderful and felt like a shared experience. And as Jamie says, like that is, you do go and see live performance when we're through this and before this with friends, with family, it's a shared experience. It's something you do with other people. So I think that's a kind of that is something that is unique to live performance that you don't get from a film. And actually, I think people have been really missing that and have been certainly thrilled to watch our productions and watch other people's work that they're doing, because it is different. It is, I think it's kind of fundamentally a different offering for people. One of the things that I'd say is that if you can make lots of noise on social media about what you're doing, that's a great way for people to communicate as well. Obviously people can chat, or if you're using something like YouTube, can chat on it, but also just on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the ways that people can stay in touch with each other. We found that the noise we've had on social is much louder, and it's kind of overwhelmingly positive. People are liking talking about the shows, and that other people are watching them, and that they're able to kind of communicate together on it. So I think the togetherness is a really key thing, and I think we shouldn't necessarily see ourselves as competing with slick films or the latest kind of great TV drama that's out, because we do offer something slightly different, and I think we should kind of own that, and it's something that people can't do otherwise at the moment. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you very much.
Just add, I think it was really interesting that when the NT's 2 governors came out, the whole Stagetext team was at home on their mobiles, because also you were reaching an audience that hadn't actually used YouTube before. And of course, they're also wanting to, for Stagetext users, they're wanting the captions. I mean, we were literally fielding, you know, no, you need to go down to the bottom of the screen and press the CC button. And we've ended up putting some instructions on our website about how to work the captions and in fact, even how to find YouTube. So it's not enough just to keep kind of throwing it out into the ether. You've got to enable a wide selection, a wide proportion of society who haven't actually accessed this type of forum, of platform before. And yes, you know, Stagetext, that isn't our job really, to kind of go, this is how you access YouTube. But obviously you want to be supportive and you do want to enable people. So I would say, whatever you're going to do, also just put a little maybe explanation of how you get there on, so that it feels real and that you're giving some personal service and that you do care about how people access things. And if it doesn't work, where do you go in that moment, especially if it's live and you can't stop it or go to it later on or anything like that?
That's a really good
Thanks
point.
very much,
Melanie.
Melanie.
Yeah, I agree very much with Jamie and Flo about the community aspect of it all. And one of the things that I think worked very well with Signal Online is that we actually started including, I think from second edition on, the YouTube comments in the video during the non-performance segment. So if you haven't seen Signal, the format is performance, and then Adam Lanson talks a bit and introduces the next performance and so on. So it alternates. And during the Adam segments, we actually have the YouTube chat on the screen. And it's very active. People are obviously asking some questions that get answered, but also they just interact with each other. And I think that helps make it feel more alive. And then the second aspect that's important is keeping things that can be live. I think that's there is something about an actually live performance that you just can't replicate. Partly because it's always risky. It's even more risky now than it ever was, and there is something exciting about that. But I think as the situation develops, everyone will, to a degree, have to re-examine what theater means to them, because it's very different now than it will be when hopefully we'll be able to get into theaters even without an audience, but just with a minimum cast and crew, and do something there and live stream from a theater with proper lighting, with proper production design. That will open up a lot of options, but still the audience will be at home. So I think it's a very difficult time, but it's also a very interesting time in that we have to figure out what theater means to us. And the answer might not be the same for everyone. And people will kind of start discovering what matters to them the most.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to
Thank you
that.
all.
So the social side of things, I think that's the main point that everybody always forgets about social media. Is the actual first word, social, how you can be social and how you can actually build that community. And all of those community aspects that you've all spoken about, it's very important that you think about how you translate that going forward, how you take that from your shows or from your those YouTube sessions and say, okay, how do we make our audience get used to talking to us, getting used to engaging with us? Because it's that engagement that's going to mean that it will last longer than this lockdown period. It means that when you go into the future and you're thinking about how to make your shows more sustainable and make your business more sustainable, that you've got those communications and you've got those audiences based on. So really think about that community side of things when you've got it and how you can move it further.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that. We've got some information about the people who are accessing our streams on YouTube, and they are kind of skewing younger, because YouTube is primarily a platform used by younger people than the National Theatre's kind of standard audience. And that's really interesting, and kind of thinking about how we can make help those people become people who attend the National or come and see NT Live in the future is something that we're really thinking about. And I also wanted to mention that we've been working with Stagetext on the captions for the National Theatre at Home, which has been fantastic. But we've also, for the first time, did a audio description on our on 12th Night that was on a couple of weeks ago, and we're also hoping to do some more of those in some of our streams that are coming up as well, that's the first time we've done that on a stream. Obviously we do that at the theatre, and that's been to be honest, something that has kind of really come out of the lockdown, that we want to try and reach as many people as we can. And we've not done that on NT Live before, but there's lots that we can now sort of take away and think about for the future. So it's been also a time of experimenting and finding out new things, which is always positive.
Thanks all. It's great that there are lots of audience development opportunities and creative development opportunities that we're finding are coming out of the situation. I know we've got lots of quite technically focused questions coming through from people watching. So handing over to Kiki or Emily now to address some of those questions.
Yes, absolutely. I'll kick it off. So actually, one of the first questions that's come through, I think I can probably answer quite easily because it's for me, but it's been a question about how to basically replicate the setup that we're doing right now, which is hosting a Zoom call, and how do you logistically get that to speak to YouTube? So, and Bartek, if you want to jump in if I get anything wrong, please do. But essentially,
actually, I've never done this part before, so you know more about this than I do. I've never.
Who knew I was ever going to be a technical expert?
Okay.
Okay.
We have got a free resource on it as well to tell you how to do it. So if needed, there is a resource on it.
Oh, brilliant! Amazing. Well, Hayden, do you actually have a specific way to access all the webinars you were talking about while we have that?
Sorry, say again, sorry.
What's the specific way we can access all the technical web?
I have never actually done it myself, but James has done it so that he does it. All our webinars we do on YouTube, so it's the similar setup to you. So when we did our first one, people were asking how do you do it, so we created a resource to show you how to do it step by step. So there's a resource that we can send out to you guys that tells you how to do it, literally step by step.
Brilliant. Well, and the condensed version is you do need to have a paid Zoom account. So obviously a standard Zoom account's cut off at 40 minutes. And as you can see, we are still going. So I have a paid Zoom account. And then you don't need anything special on the YouTube end. You do need to go into the back end of Zoom and click some fancy things. And Zoom has a really good how to do that, how to allow for custom live streaming service to speak to YouTube. And then there's actually two ways to go live on YouTube. One is just to go automatically live, and it will just show up as an organic video. And the second is a scheduled video, which is what we've done for this call. So I went into the Other Palace YouTube account, scheduled this call for 5 o'clock. Everyone was able to access the page well in advance. You could set a reminder. And then at the bottom, I can't show you sadly, but you can go into, what's it called? I can't see it now, but you want to start custom live streaming service, and it will take you to a Zoom page. And basically there's a stream key and a URL that you grab from YouTube, drop it in, and then it will all just basically start speaking to each other. And the back end of YouTube, there is a YouTube studio. You click a button that says go live, and that's when we started showing on the front end for all your viewers. Yes, Melanie.
And if you wanted to live subtitle this, it's possible as well with Zoom and YouTube. So you would need an external remote speech to text reporter, and just come to Stagetext and we can talk it through with you about how you do it. But actually you could have this live subtitled at the same time, and it would go through and feed onto the YouTube, and it would be there permanently as well. So there are lots of things that are possible as well to make this accessible if you so desired.
Brilliant. Thank you, Melanie. And from the cost side of that, there's absolutely no cost to us, with the exception of paying for a paid Zoom account. So that is a very low cost option if that is a path anybody wants to go down. And then this is kind of a follow-up question that's come through on the chat. Thank you so much for all the questions. This is from Multi-Show Productions. How do you go about artists using your social media or YouTube channels? Do they need to log into your account, or is there another way for them to access? And that is open to the panel.
What's the question? Say that again.
Sorry. So the question is, how do you go about artists using your social media or YouTube channels? Do they need to log in to your account, or is there another way?
Oh, so like a takeover.
Exactly.
Yeah, they'll have to log into your account, unfortunately.
I would say it depends to a degree, because if it's just one person at a time, then that makes the most sense. But if it's something like on Hope or Signal, where it's multiple people, then you kind of aggregate things, because you won't be kind of having multiple people log in and log out all the time. But yeah, for a single person, then it's usually they have to log in, or on some platforms you can add kind of another moderator of some kind. For example, on Facebook, you can give someone admin rights, and you can just keep adding those people.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there's an option on Instagram Live now where you can now do a split screen. So if, for example, I was on the Other Palace website and wanted to do a one-on-one interview with someone, there's an easy way to invite them to do so.
Great. So can we take, there's a couple of questions around the live and recorded content. And I think this is possibly a Bartek question, but could be for anyone. From Michael, is there an easy way to combine live content and pre-recorded material? What would you suggest the best ways might be of going about that?
It depends. If it's just audio, again, it depends. It's kind of, the answer is it depends what's pre-recorded and what you have. In the majority of cases that we've dealt with, we would have a backing track and then live vocals. And then you can combine the two in a DAW like Logic or GarageBand, and then route the audio out of that and into whatever you're streaming with. The details depend on whether you're streaming on your own, you're streaming to someone else, what exact setup you're using, but kind of at the center of it will be a DAW. And the good thing about that is that you can then mix your mic audio a little bit. So I've touched upon that in the introduction, but yeah, you can add compression, you can create some more space for your voice within the backing track and so on. So it's a very general answer, but kind of without going over someone's exact case, it's kind of difficult to cover all the bases.
Thank you. There's another one, I think that's possibly quite a quick one to answer. In exploring whether to use Skype or Zoom to capture the live feed of performances, this is Steph Weller wanting to know how they can then stream them via their own website. So is it better to capture from Skype or Zoom? Any opinions there?
It depends, in my opinion, on what the exact performance is. It's before any kind of tech question can be answered, you have to go over the art questions. The answer will be different if it's theater as a non-musical theater, and it will be different if it's musical theater or music. So for example, public theater, they did a show that was completely on Zoom, and they did their sound through Zoom. If you're doing something where sound is the main thing, I would not use Zoom or Skype at all. Right. So the first question is, what is the show? What's the nature of the show? What's the format of the show? And then you can kind of build up the specific tech solution from that. But yeah, at this point, we don't use Zoom or Skype at all. We actually have the artists stream to us, and then that gets aggregated. And that gives us much more control over sound. And usually better video. It does depend on people's connection and so on, but in general, it's better for us.
Right, thank you. James, did you want to pick up a question?
Yes, sure. So we've got a question here from L. Carey here, and this is for all of the panel, really. Thinking of those independent artists or really small companies that have really limited resources, what would be your advice for sort of starting out in terms of the sort of cheapest option for sharing work online? You know, and that includes in terms of gaining funds or resources towards starting out. What would be your advice for people really getting out of the starter sort of pen to start with their first online streaming?
I think it depends on what, if you're going to start, you could start basic. You could just, for example, The Place Studio, they're a dance organization. And what they found is when they used to live stream their rehearsals, they got really good engagement from their audience. Now this was pre-lockdown, but they literally used their mobile phone. They were streaming to their Facebook page, using their mobile phone, their rehearsals, and they were getting hundreds of comments, thousands of people coming onto the stream to watch people rehearse. So you can start really, really small, and then build out from that. And then the more you get used to it, the more you'll start to add different bits of equipment, and you can build on from there.
I think just to add to that as well, one thing that I sort of find is, obviously we have if you're going to charge for any online streaming, if you're about to start out, I think you need to think very carefully about what it is that you charge and what it is that you're providing. But what I would also add to that is, one of the things that we've encountered putting the series for Leave a Light On together is that some artists or agents have come back to us and said, so-and-so just doesn't feel comfortable charging during this time. And what I would say to that, I think, is there needs to be a balance. So what people are doing at the minute, providing free content, is brilliant. And also providing charity content, I think it's brilliant. But I think there does need to be a balance, because actors, producers, creatives, we all have a right to still earn money. And I do think in the arts, we are one of the most giving sectors in the UK with regards to our time and our effort on the whole, with regards to charity. And one thing that I would say is that we are a bit of a shame. We're quite ashamed as an industry to charge, because there's no set charge for what we do. And I think that that's something to really think about when you're starting out, is you don't need to be ashamed of finding a way to get people to pay for your work. And that's not to say that I think that people should pay for everything. I think that we are a brilliant, diverse and wonderful industry, and the work that people are doing at the minute, putting streams out for free, is excellent. But at the same time, I do think that if you're going to start streaming content and you're doing it for the basis that you want to be able to help yourself earn during this time, I don't think that's a problem. And one way that some people are doing that, obviously we've got a ticketing system that we use, because that's already in place. But some people have come to me about this, and some people are using PayPal or other ways to get people to pay, and then they send a link once the funds have cleared. And there are ways to do that. So from a financial perspective, in terms of gaining the funds for your work, I don't think there is anything to be ashamed of with regards to ticketing something, provided that the system's in place and you're giving something that you feel represents you and is a quality.
Thank you.
Just to add to that as well, if you have to be realistic as well, though, if you don't have an audience, I do kind of have to stress that if you don't have an audience who's already preconditioned for you charging a fee, that's not necessarily going to change because now you're saying I want to charge. So you have to really think about how you develop that audience, so they're used to you saying, okay, now we've got to charge a fee for it. So definitely everything what Jamie said is bang on the money, and you definitely deserve to earn from it. But if you've never done it before, and then you go to your audience and say, now we're going to charge this amount of money for a piece of content that they used to maybe they had free before, you have to think about how you're going to condition them to say, okay, yes, now I can give you money for this.
Just to build up, sorry,
go on, Jamie.
Sorry, I'll take. I completely agree with you. I think that that's one of the challenges that people are facing during this time, when people don't have the opportunity to go to the theatre or go to live performance and buy a ticket. Streams traditionally of online of shows have been free or for very little money or for memberships. And I think that transition is something that we are actually all going to have to bear in mind, particularly for the next year, but in the future as well. I think that as everyone's already made this point, there is a degree of work to be done in the fact that streaming is this kind of streaming and this kind of creativity with regards to our industry is going to grow and isn't necessarily going to go away after this. But particularly during this time, I think if this is one of the only outlets for people to make money, I do think that there's a degree of work to be done about how to convince audiences who've been beforehand managed to maybe get content for free or as part of a subscription membership to pay per concert or to pay for content coming from artists.
I think that's a really good point, Jamie. We've obviously made the National Theatre at Home offering is free, but that's not sustainable to kind of do that for forever, and is absolutely a response to the current situation. But it is something that we'll need to think about going forward, and I think the sector will need to think about, because there was a big rush to kind of get work out, which was great, and that's really great to get the work out to people, especially when there's no other way for them to experience it. But I think it is something that as a sector we'll need to think about going forward, depending how long this goes on for. So I think it's a really good point, and actually artists absolutely deserve to be paid during this time.
Going back to what Hayden said about, well, you're offering content for free, now you're asking to pay for it. One of the options is, can you differentiate between the stuff that's free and the stuff that's paid, where you're providing certain content for free and you keep doing that, but then there's kind of a premium option, and people do that with things like Patreon or just even with PayPal. And then no one feels like they're being in some way cheated, because you keep providing all that free stuff, but hey, if you want more, you've got this option. So that's one thing. And I completely agree about what was said about the situation having to evolve a bit, because I don't think the current model is sustainable for artists, for theaters. We do all need to find a way for things to keep going for what might be up to a year, maybe even. And I mean, it's great that art is being made, but in order to make art, artists do need to eat. So it's pretty important.
Yeah,
thanks very much, Bartek.
Yeah, it's important that you find ways to make it sustainable, so that whatever you're doing now will make sense in the future, so you can actually make a revenue stream. Definitely.
And Hayden, while we got you, we've had a question coming in following before about those technical webinars that you were mentioning. So just to asking for further clarification, we were saying that they go to the Arts Council England website and they can be found under the Digital Culture Network page on there.
Yeah, literally. So if you go to ace_DCM, which is our Twitter page, I've literally just tweeted about our next webinar, which is on Thursday. So you can just literally click on the link and it is there for you. It's a free webinar. The previous webinar is also attached to that in the Twitter thread there. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Amazing. So another question coming through on the comments. This is maybe, well, anybody can jump in, but maybe we start with Flo and Jamie. How are you approaching the PRS and the copyright of the material that you are streaming? For example, if you, Flo, this might be a good place for you to start. If anybody had said, no, I'm not comfortable with you streaming any of the videos, would that have put a stop to it?
Yes, because we don't own the way that our rights agreements are set up on NT Live. We don't wholly own the recording as the national. We jointly own it with the rights holders, with the involved. So yeah, it's really important to have permission from those involved, and to make sure everyone's kind of on board with what you're doing. That's, I mean, it depends on what basis you've you've made the work or you've recorded the work, and what agreements were in place then, and under what basis or discussions you're having now. But yeah, that's a really important thing to consider.
Just to add to that as well, I think it's important to differentiate what PRS and grand rights are. So with what the National are doing, obviously they've got they need permission to have the grand rights for the show to put it out there. It's slightly different with regards to what we're doing, because we're not doing whole shows or even excerpts from shows. We're doing a cabaret performance from an individual performer who's picked a selection of things. We have a PRS license for online streaming. It's definitely worth going to PRS. They're very responsive. They're very good to talk to. It's definitely worth speaking to them about what you might need going forward. There's all sorts. It depends on how large the scale of the stream is that you're doing, revenue and all sorts. So it's definitely worth having a look into that, because it's important to make sure you get that right. But we via the tech streaming platform that our tech team have built, have an online streaming license that was already in place.
Brilliant. Does anybody else on the panel have anything to add to that one? Okay, great. Emily, do you want to hit us with another
jump in there? So a question that's come in: is there an overload of content online at the moment? Has the market been saturated? And I guess a follow-up to that being, what do we do about this? What are people's thoughts about the saturation?
I think the main issue is that there's no one's really thought through, well, not no, I can't say nobody, but there's not a lot of organizations that thought through why they put this content online. It was more a case of just quick, we've got to get content out because we need to connect with our audience. I think that if people have now started to pull back a little bit and start to realize that there's too much content out. And I think what will happen is the people who start to pull back and start to consistently make good content that is relevant and that will again lead to their business sustainability will be okay in the long term. But again, it goes back to, if a lot of organizations now have realized that they've got to be online, that they've got to have a digital presence of some sort. So it's just going back to how you develop that audience. If you're developing that audience to come on this journey with you to, and looking at other ways you can share your content. So for example, if you're doing a show, are there other elements that you can have an educational element of content that you now charge for what you might not have done before, for example. So it's just about thinking about other ways that you can kind of monetize the work you're doing, because as we've all kind of said, there's no guarantee that we're going back to normal anytime soon. So that long-term thinking, that long-term planning really has to come through.
Melanie?
I think also just in terms of quality and thinking through right from the beginning in terms of access, showing a film that is just one camera that was kind of stuck in the balcony isn't necessarily going to show your work off to an audience and then say, well, actually we've put subtitles, but they're then auto-generated from YouTube, isn't going to give your viewer any quality experience. And I think it's about actually thinking what are our values, who do we really want to engage in this project or performance. And so in terms of access, you know, we don't comment on an artistic kind of view. That's not Stagetext's job. It's very much about, from an accessible point of view, we are there to actually say, you need to try your best. You wouldn't do it for your hearing audience. Why do you think it's acceptable for a deaf or visually impaired audience to exclude them or give them substandard access? So I think it's just really taking that time and thinking it through and thinking, you know, we want to take this audience with us in the future, just as Hayden was saying. That's really important. So yeah, think about it, train yourself up and start thinking right from the beginning. Now's a good time to think, what will happen in 2 years' time if we're still like this? Where do I want to be? How do I plan my access to go into my applications in future? You know, have I spoken to the right sector support organisations? Because we're there for individuals as well as, you know, large organisations as well.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm aware we're almost at our 90 minutes, but there are quite a lot of questions. So I'm wondering whether we can cover a few more. Do you think, James?
Yeah, should we just quickly, I think there's several questions that want us to go back over in a bit more detail, the sound challenges that particularly for those wanting to place musical theatre online are finding. Martin Coslet was asking about Clean Feed, which I presume, I'm not very technical, but Clean Feed I presume is a particular technical platform or program. I think this was addressing Bartek, if you can further. Yes. I know you've addressed that slightly, but if there's anything further you can say about the different platforms that you would use or recommend for a blend of audio. The other question about this is about where you're trying to have a live feed from several sources at the same time, and people are asking what's the best program to use or platform for multiple singers as in a chorus in a musical theatre sharing.
Okay, so Clean Feed produces very good sound, much higher quality than Zoom or Skype. For those of you who don't know, it works in a browser, ideally in Chrome. Basically, most of those browser-based things generally work in Chrome best. It has a free option which produces, I think, some chirping every once in a while. So it's not ideal for a continuous performance, and has a paid option that's not too expensive. I think it's like £15 or $15 a month. And the sound quality is really good, but it only does sound. We did use it at the very beginning, but it meant syncing audio and video separately on my computer. So I was literally sitting there adjusting the delay between the two by hand. So I would type in, okay, that sounds like about 750 milliseconds. That was not fun. If you're going to only do sound, that is a very good solution because it's simple. And sounds good. It's not without its problems, but it is pretty damn good. If you're going to do video as well, if you're doing it on your own, then you want to basically use streaming software. One option is OBS. A variation of OBS is used by probably most streamers, so like game streamers and so on and so on. It's very popular, it's free, it's fairly easy to learn to use, and if you have any VST plugins for audio, it will work with that. So I actually use a bunch of plugins that I've had before for kind of like the final stage sound mixing. So sometimes I will denoise someone's sound a bit, compress it, EQ it a little bit, and it's all using the plugins that I already had. It obviously gets more complicated if you have multiple people in a show, because then they have to stream to you, and there are different options that depend on what you're trying to accomplish. Some of them will have a delay of a few seconds. Some of them will have a delay of maybe 100, 200 milliseconds. But one thing to understand is that they all have a delay. You can't really have anything instantaneous over the internet. You can have it very fast, and there is research into getting musical collaboration to work really fast over the internet, but it's very much still a work in progress. I know of two tools, both of which are great in that they can even get anywhere close to that, but they are somewhat problematic in that they require some technical know-how. They aren't guaranteed to work because suddenly your network congestion is a bit higher and you just can't get low enough latency, or the quality isn't good. So I wouldn't necessarily attempt to do live collaboration performances at this stage. You can definitely experiment with that, and given that a lot of these pieces of software are being actively worked on now, much more than they were 3 months ago, because there is a need for that. It's possible that within a few months, it will be doable in an easier way, in a more reliable way. But I wouldn't necessarily jump into it just now. The two solutions that I am aware of, I haven't even had time to explore them because I know that it would be quite a bit of a time investment, and I had to get all the other stuff working. So did I cover all the aspects of it?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Bartek.
No problem.
I think it's back to me for some questions. This one's from Alex Jackson. Hi, Alex. This goes back to the question of paying performers, which I think people are really quite keen on doing, though I understand the challenges of income are challenging at this point. Alex's question is there a best practice guideline or guidance on paying artists to stream their performances, i.e., would they be paid a session rate for live performance and a royalty payment for the pre-recorded? Jamie, sorry, this might be best answered by you, but please, anybody else can jump in.
So the way that we've done it via our system is that we are doing a ticket split with the artists, which was the quickest and most simple way to get everything up and running. And also, I think, encourages artists to, the way that Leave a Light On works is it appeals directly to these individual artists' fan base. So it encourages them to use their social media to promote the show. And we ensured that the largest portion of that ticket split went to the artists. So that's how we've been doing it. But I do also know that some people, I mean, is this question from someone who's looking to pay an artist, or is it from an artist? Do we know what the...
So Alex is a producer, so would be looking to pay an artist.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So I think, to be honest, this is new territory in many ways to the scale that it is at the minute. And I think making sure your artists get remunerated is very important. How you do that, it's the same in theatre. There's you know, you could do a guarantee versus a split of box office share. You could do a set fee. You could do a, I mean, if it's a show that's archived, you could give them buyout. It entirely depends on what agreement you reach with the artist. But this kind of stuff this is uncharted territory with regards to streaming, but it's not uncharted with regards to producer-artist relationships, because it works the same way as you do when you put a show on. There are many ways to come to an agreement with an artist about how to pay them, provided that they get paid is the most important thing.
I can ask a question. Flo, you see with your YouTube, do you monetize your YouTube adverts on it? And does that act as some sort of type of payment, or does that not work like that for you guys?
We have started doing that for the first time, but I don't think we've got much information yet as to how that's working. That is something that you can do on YouTube, but it's I think it's quite complicated to get set up. I'm not the person who set it up, so I don't have the most information on that. Our YouTube streams are free for people to access, but we have made a payment for that specific usage on YouTube to the artists. So it's not a buyout of anything else. It's just for that YouTube 7-day stream.
Great. So thank you. I have a question about that whole area of when it goes wrong. How can we have confidence in online streaming? So as Christopher's pointed out, has more points of failure than broadcast TV or cinema. Is there anything we can be doing to help ourselves in this context?
Have people behind the scenes. So we touched upon the stage management aspect of it earlier, but also in shows where it makes sense, it is really good to have a moderator, because in something like Signal, if there is a tech issue, we can always cut to Adam. So he can kind of get us through that portion where something is going wrong. So it's basically have a plan B, have something to fall back on. And another thing is sound check, test everything. Just if you haven't done a live stream before, go to YouTube. If you've got a Gmail account, then automatically you have a YouTube account, and do an unlisted stream that no one will ever see it. You can, if you're doing it on your own, you'll see it. If you're doing it with a team, you can send the link to your team, and you'll be able to figure out 90% of your problems before the stream gets to anyone else. So yeah, it's preparation and a plan B.
Yeah, I'd say having talk about this more in terms of the context of NT live broadcast, but have a contingency plan in place. No one likes talking about things going wrong, but it's really important that you do, so that you know what you'll do or who's going to communicate with the audience if something goes wrong. So just have that kind of planned out, and hopefully nothing will go wrong, but at least if it does, you kind of know who from your team or yourself, what you're going to do, how you're going to communicate with people, and yeah, rehearsing as much as you can with the if you are on YouTube, yeah, the unlisted bit is really helpful, because you can kind of practice and watch things back and check that your quality check your recording as well. I guess if it's not going out live, it might sound silly or a bit basic, but do check the recording that it is as you want it to be and as you'd expected it to be before you put it up.
Amazing. Oh no, Jamie, did you have anything else? Go on.
Sorry, I was just going to add, with our process, one thing that we do with our tech teams is we have, there's a link that goes out to everyone when our shows are about to begin that they can click, and it's an individually generated link that isn't that's only one-time viewable. So if they share it, it's just to protect the artist, to make sure they get paid, basically, rather than having people share a link all over fan pages and stuff. But if someone has a problem, we do have a backup already loaded up and ready to go that is available maybe for like 24 hours that they can watch one time, as a way of saying, sorry, you couldn't get on the stream, or if there's an issue with a tech problem or whatever. You're absolutely right in saying that it's really important that there is some kind of backup in place, because when these things go wrong, because it's a tech thing, sometimes it's not incredibly easy to reload up a whole hour-long show and get it out there really quickly. If it's already there, customer service-wise, it's out and you can send it, and people are happy as long as they get to see the show. That's the most important part.
Amazing. Well, thank you. We'll probably wrap up there because it's almost dinner time for everyone. So I just want to first say thank you to all the panelists for joining us today. I really appreciate everything you've had to say, and I'm sure, as Bartek alluded, everything is going to be organic and ongoing. So who knows, maybe we'll have another panel in 4 months when things have evolved more, and we'll have new technology and new thoughts on how everything is gone. So if there's anyone still on YouTube, we do encourage you to embrace the liveness of this event. If you want to clap in the comments, please do. We love a community feel. So yay, thank you. Thank you to everyone who has joined live. And just to say that this will be available on YouTube from now until forever. So if you've joined or think someone who wasn't able to join live would enjoy this, please do share this. We hope it will be useful for you to make your own content or share existing content to your audiences. So with that, we will say goodnight. Thank you for coming, and we'll hopefully see you in real life soon. Right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.